watching Biography of the Millennium on A&E. Here's where we stand in our countdown of the most influential people of the last 1,000 years.
The Johnson Wax Program with Fibber McGee and Molly.
It's said that when our number 84, Guglielmo Marconi, was en route to Britain at the turn of the century, he was stopped at customs. Officials thought his black boxes were bombs. They had them destroyed. The devices young Marconi carried were explosive, but not the way the officers imagined. They were an invention that would change the way the world communicates: radio. At the age of 21, Marconi figured out how to send a message through the air without wires. And within a short time, he was transmitting all the way across the Atlantic.
The invention of radio essentially removed us from the shackles of wires and connections. It creates radio and television. It creates cellular telephony.
Since its invention, wireless has saved numberless ships and human lives from ocean disaster.
One poignant example, the Titanic. When the great ship went down, distress calls were sent out. Of course, many died, but over 700 survived, thanks to Marconi and his invention. He was a giant of a man in every way, and he would single-handedly drag his country out of the Middle Ages. Peter the Great, Tsar of Russia. Peter imported European scholars and craftsmen to work and teach. He founded the Russian Navy and won his landlocked country a path to the sea. Of course, he could be a tyrant. Progress was bought with excessive taxation and slave labor. But when Peter the Great was finished, Russia had become a superpower. Number 82 is this man, Niels Bohr, master physicist, father of quantum theory, decoder of the atom's powerful secrets.
Bohr was the first one to understand how an atom is put together.
Bohr fled the Nazis during the war and brought his research with him, helping make the A-bomb a reality. For the rest of his life, Bohr devoted himself to obliterating the horror he helped create and waged a worldwide campaign for peace.
Mandela insisted on walking so people could see him. The silver-haired black leader with his wife at his side waved to the huge crowd.
It was one of the most thrilling events of the decade, a February day in 1990 when Nelson Mandela was freed. Mandela had been imprisoned for 27 years. His crime, opposition to South Africa's vicious system of apartheid. Racial segregation at the point of a gun. Even in solitary confinement, Mandela's voice was heard, and worldwide opinion rallied to his cause. When they freed Mandela, they freed his country. In South Africa's first democratic election, blacks and whites came together to elect him president. His first act was to open his arms to those who had imprisoned him.
I think the message, he was in jail for 27 years. He came out without bitterness, open and prepared to work with those who locked him up. And given what is happening on the African continent, you ask yourself, why can't they learn from him? Why can't they get his message?
I crown thee, Elizabeth, Queen of England, Ireland, and France. God save your majesty.
She was the most powerful woman Europe had ever seen. Elizabeth I, Queen of England, number 80 on our list. She was remarkably modern, a quick-witted politician, and one of the first great spin doctors.
She was someone who was brilliant at propaganda. She went on these progresses through England. She would come and talk to ordinary people. She was dazzling. She was a great speaker. So she was a wonderful image maker.
Her subjects adored her. A striking figure and a hands-on leader, she became one of the first cult personalities in the Western world. Elizabeth reigned for 45 years, and in that time, she pushed her nation to conquer half the world. The sun would not set on her British Empire for the next 5 centuries.
Stalin was a psychopath in power, with an enormous army, with absolute control of information in people's minds in a way that to us is unimaginable.
He started out studying for the priesthood, but he became one of the most merciless dictators in the world. The blood of some 30 million people is on his hands. Joseph Stalin, premier of the Soviet Union.
He was a maniac who committed heinous acts, wiped out generations of intellectuals and clergy.
Stalin crushed his country, then recast it as an industrial giant. When World War II ended, he provoked the Cold War that would consume the planet for the next 45 years.
The damage that Stalin wrought, and the damage that he set in place even after his death, will continue to haunt the Soviet Union and now Russia for decades to come.
It's impossible to put Gutenberg and Einstein, Stalin and Roosevelt on a single list and say who was more important. But it's fun to try because it makes us think about what mattered in the world.